Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes or H. Holmes, was an American con artist and serial killer active between 1891 and 1894. By the time of his execution in 1896, Holmes had engaged in a lengthy criminal career that included insurance fraud, forgery, swindling, 3 to 4 bigamous illegal marriages, horse theft, and murder. His most notorious crimes took place in Chicago around the time of the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. Despite his confession of 27 murders, including some people who were verifiably still alive, Holmes was convicted and sentenced to death for only one murder, that of his business partner and accomplice Benjamin Pitzel. It is believed he also killed 3 of Pitzel's children, as well as 3 mistresses, the child of one mistress and the sister of another. Holmes was hanged on May 7, 1896. Much of the lore attached to Holmes concerns the so-called Murder Castle, a 3-story building he commissioned in Chicago. Details about the building, along with many of his alleged crimes, are considered exaggerated or fabricated for sensationalistic tabloid pieces, with some accounts estimating his body count could have been as high as 133 or even 200. Many of these inaccuracies have persisted due to the combination of ineffective police investigation and hyperbolic yellow journalism of the period, which is often cited as historical record. Holmes gave various contradictory accounts of his life, initial claiming innocence and later that he was possessed by Satan. His propensity for lying has made it difficult for researchers to ascertain the truth on the basis of his statements. For example, he claimed that Dr. Robert Leacock, a fellow medical student, was one of the first murder victims, and in 1886 he killed for insurance money. However, Leacock died on October 5th in 1889 in Watford, Ontario, Canada. Since the 1990s, Holmes has often been described as a serial killer. In his book about Holmes, author Adam Seltzer writes, "Just killing several people isn't necessarily enough for most definitions of a serial killer. More often, it has to be a series of similar crimes committed over a period of time, usually more to satisfy a psychological urge on the killer's part than any more practical motive," he added. The murders we can connect Holmes to generally had a clear motive. Someone knew too much or was getting in his way and couldn't be trusted. The murders were simply for love of bloodshed, but a necessary part of furthering his swindling operations and protecting his lifestyle. Holmes was born Herman Webster Mudgett on May 16, 1861 in Gilmantown, New Hampshire, the third child of Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price, both of whom were descended from the first English settlers in the area. As an adolescent, Holmes attended Phillips Exeter Academy before graduating high school with honors from Gilman Academy when he was 16. Holmes' parents were both devout Methodists. His father was from a farming family, and at times he worked as a farmer, trader, and house painter. He was also reportedly a heavy drinker who cruelly mistreated his family. Holmes also faced bullying by classmates due to his outstanding academic capabilities. In one incident, he was forced to stand in front of a human skeleton and put the skeleton's hands on his face in an effort to frighten him. Initially terrified, Holmes later discovered the experience to be intriguing and claimed that it helped him overcome his worries. Holmes subsequently developed an obsession with death as a result of the encounter and later took up the pastime of dissecting animals. In 1882, Holmes entered the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery and graduated in June 1884 after passing his exams. While enrolled, he worked in the anatomy lab under Professor William James Herndon, then the chief anatomy instructor, and the two were said to have been engaged in facilitating grave robbing to supply medical cadavers. Holmes had apprenticed in New Hampshire under Nahum Wright and noted advocate of human dissection. Years later, when Holmes was suspected of murder and claimed to be nothing but an insurance fraudster, he admitted to using cadavers to defraud life insurance companies with several times in college. Holmes moved to Chicago in 1886, which is when he began using the pseudonym H. Holmes. Soon after his arrival, he came across a drugstore at the northwest corner of South Wallace Avenue and West 63rd Street in the Inglewood section of Chicago. The drugstore's owner, Elizabeth Holton, gave Holmes a job. He proved to be a hard-working employee, eventually buying the store. Contrary to several accounts, Holmes did not kill Dr. E.S. Holton. Holmes purchased an empty lot across the street where construction began in 1887 for a two-story mixed-use building with apartments on the second floor and retail spaces, including a new drugstore on the first. When Holmes declined to pay the architects or the steel company, Aetna Iron and Steel, they took him to court in 1888. In 1892, he added a third floor, telling investors and suppliers he intended to use it as a hotel during the upcoming World's Columbian Exposition. Contemporary accounts report that Holmes built the hotel to lure tourists visiting the exposition in order to kill them and sell their skeletons to nearby medical schools. Although he did have a history of selling stolen cadavers to medical schools, Holmes had acquired these wares through grave robbing rather than murder. Likewise, there is no evidence that Holmes ever murdered exposition goers on the premises. The yellow press labeled the building as Holmes' Murder Castle, claiming the structure contained secret torture chambers, trapdoors, gas chambers, and a basement crematorium. None of these sensationalized claims were true. Other accounts stated the hotel was made up of over 100 rooms and laid out in a maze with doors opening into brick walls, windowless rooms, and dead-end staircases. In reality, the third-floor hotel was moderately sized, largely unremarkable, and uncompleted due to Holmes' disputes with the builders. It did contain some hidden rooms, but they were used for hiding furniture Holmes bought on credit and did not intend to pay for. Holmes did not kill an alleged castle victim, Miss Kate Durkee, who turned out to be very much alive. In his confession, Holmes' usual murder method was by suffocation of his victims, including an overdose of chloroform, overexposure to lighting gas fumes, and trapped in an airless vault, to give some examples. Holmes also claimed to have used starvation and burning victims alive in his castle. Holmes' hotel was gutted by a fire started by an unknown arsonist shortly after his arrest, but was largely rebuilt and used as a post office until 1938. Besides his infamous murder castle, Holmes also owned a one-story factory which he claimed was to be used for glass bending. It is unclear if the factory furnace was ever used for this purpose. It was speculated to have been used to destroy incriminating evidence of Holmes' crimes.